So yeah, as mentioned, this is going to be quite practical, but before we get into it, I have about 15 minutes to go through this, okay? I'm gonna show you what you should be doing today if you actually wanna get more out of these tools, okay? So that's where we're gonna arrive. Plus, I'm actually gonna address two pieces of news that are quite massive throughout the last week. One of them is what OpenAI is looking at, which direction they're going in. And secondly is actually the Google Gemini release and how to actually use that to your advantage yourself, okay? So before we do that, we need to take a step back and talk about this product development that has been happening right under our eyes over the course of the last few years. Okay, and I'm talking about ChatGPT here, okay? So what I wanna do is I'm gonna briefly go through the history of how the product has developed ever since the release end of November 2022, okay? Because when you look at the different phases in isolation, it can be interesting and it can be a good topic to talk about, but rarely do people really connect the dots that have led us to the point where we are today and where we are heading. Because it does clearly in my eyes, but I do spend all my time kind of looking at this and talking about this and using this. In my eyes and my team's eyes, everybody agrees that the trajectory that this is in and the products that we have here, like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Llama, and all these tech companies, what they're doing, they're heading in a clear direction. And before revealing it, I kind of want to talk about the different points that led up to today, okay? So first things first, we had, GPT 1, 2, and 3 that were not accessible through a user-friendly interface like this. Most people in here, including me, probably weren't using that on a regular basis. You had to have a very specific prompting style. Most of the results weren't that useful. With GPT 3, it kind of did cross a certain limit where it became very useful for certain use cases, but only with the introduction of GPT 3.5 and this interface that most of you probably know and have account and used and at the very least tried. Only this really made it possible, right? Having a little chat box where you can actually leverage and use your social skills that all of you have, by the way, even the introverted people here. You can understand me, right? So you have some social skills, you understand language, and only by having this interface where you can actually talk to it like a human, kind of, that unlocked a lot, okay? So this was the very first release that really made a lot of people realize what kind of power hides here, okay? Before we move on, I have one question. For a show of hands, how many people here have Plus? How many people have Plus today, subscribed to Plus? It's usually, it's not most. It's about, like, even at these events, it's about 20% of the people, which is interesting because that says a lot. It says that you're not getting as much value out of it today as $20 are worth a month, right? So, and I think that's fair. I don't want to overstate the capabilities here, okay? I'm going to show you where this is heading. As we said, we're already heading there. And then I'm going to show you what to do about it and how to kind of like get ahead of most people in terms of what you can do with this. Because then the upgrade came, right? We went from 3.5 to 4. And as many of you know that kind of use this regularly, massive leap in terms of quality, right? Like literally for writing and for creative tasks and reasoning, I personally like the creative capabilities the most. Massive leap, a real improvement, okay? In quality, consistency, less hallucinations, better results. Big leap, okay? Then we went ahead and added multiple features here over time. So as you might know, when we switch over to 4, we have capabilities now like uploading files, including images. You can give it an image and it's going to recognize the image. Now, what's the point of that? It recognizes your images. That's the point. What's the point of the chat box that I addressed before? It takes your language. What's the point of the code interpreter that's built in, the data analysis tool? It takes your data. All of this is about taking stuff from your life, the expression that you have through your words, the documents, the Excel sheets, the files, the images, everything that is in your life, on your phone, on your computer, and you're able to interact with that. For now, that interaction has to be initiated by yourself through so-called prompt, right? As we just talked about, in LangChain, the prompt is one part of the pipeline, right? But a very important part, because that is the one where you speak stuff into existence. Right? With the prompt, you tell it that, hey, get me this result. Now, that can take many forms. We won't get into that. But all of these different input methods, like adding data, adding images, are just different ways to prompt. Now, I personally am a big fan of the image input because it just makes it so simple to kind of communicate, right? It's just a few weeks ago, I had this accounting use case. And from the European Central Bank, I had like this table of conversion rates between euro and dollar. And yeah, just transferring that myself would have took like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, annoying task, right? Doing it for 12 months. So all I did is I just took a screenshot of it all, threw it into GPT, and I was like, turn this into a CSV. it did it. Just copied the CSV and used it. So simple to prompt, right? Way simpler than having to like explain, ooh, take every field one by one and then add, you know, one column is going to be conversion rate, second column is going to be this. It would take a while. So all of this is making it simpler for you to use it, okay? And here we get to kind of like the end of this like product roadmap feature, right? There's few more things that were added. One of them was custom instructions. And I think this is by most people the number one overlooked feature in here, okay? GPTs, we'll talk about that in a second, are just the evolution of this, but this is really where you personalize it. So as I was talking about, when you upload your own data, when you prompt it in your own way for your own use cases, for your own life, you make it do what you want, what you need, right? Like what's a good prompt? I always say this when I teach ChatGPT, like what's a good prompt? Well, it's one that gets you a result that you're happy with. That's it. Right? It doesn't need to be overcomplicated. If you're happy with the result, it's good. Custom instructions help you really dial in who you are and what you need, okay? So this is the next level of personalization because this is persistent across time. This personalizes the product. It's kind of a baby step towards fine-tuning a model, which we won't talk about here, but this really tells it, I mean, look, in my case, you know, I teach AI, I have a YouTube channel, all that, and it knows about it. So if I just flip this little switch, every single answer here is going to be customized to my own needs. Beautiful thing, it also works in 3.5. So this is what I'm trying to get to. Having a set of instructions like this that tells it just a little bit about yourself, defining these few variables like profession, specific interests, current projects that you're working on, really helps. And the cool thing about that, it doesn't just help now, it helps like in this product, it helps in Gemini, it helps in Llama, it helps in anything that's going to come out, okay? Because custom instructions really personalize it to your own needs, okay? And what are GPTs? You might have heard about them. They're kind of a combination of all that, okay? I forgot to mention one thing, which is plugins. And that is where we enter brand new territory. It's not you speaking stuff into existence that you want to make happen, okay? Plugins are apps like Canva, giving out what they do and making it simpler for you. So when you tell it, hey, create me a PowerPoint presentation, Canva can go ahead and like arrange the things for you. You know, it's primitive. I'm not saying it's great right now, but it's the worst it's ever going to be. So when we bring all that together, that's where we get GPTs. You get all the capabilities of GPT-4, you get image inputs, you get code interpreter with data analysis, you get custom instructions, you get plugins in the form of actions, and you get to attach your files as a knowledge base. You get to attach PDFs, you get to attach databases, and all of a sudden you created a specialized worker. And this is the way I want you guys to think about this, because really what this is an assistant, but as soon as you enter kind of GPT territory, it's more of a worker. It's more of an employee, so to say, and that is doing a specialized thing, okay? So this is a general purpose model that does a lot, okay? A GPT does one thing, ideally. You set it up to do one thing. You give it the documents that it needs to do the thing. You maybe give it an action to perform that one action, that one thing. You give it the instructions to teach it about the context of the task it has, and then it can do that. Can it do it very well? To be honest, not really. In most cases, people will agree that today, when using these models, there's a lot of exceptions with use cases and stuff, but today, in most use cases, it's an assistant, right? It's not a finished product. It's not a polished thing that you copy, paste, and use. But for rewriting, for data analysis, many more examples can maybe even get the whole task done, right? Like, I'm not a data analyst. With the release of the feature, today I am. I know how to ask it, what can I do with this data? And then it just gives me a list, and then I know how to ask one or two more times on that list of questions. Then I ask it those questions, and I can do stuff that, you know, 1 year ago I wasn't able to do. No background in that, but all of a sudden pulling all the YouTube analytics and asking and getting to insights that I wouldn't have arrived at a year ago. Simple as that. Okay, so if GPTs bring it all together, then what is important here, okay? Now that I gave you this little like overview of kind of the product and the different things that are in here, what is important? What does all of this have in common, and how can you actually use this to get better results than most other people? The answer to that is learn more about yourself and how to communicate that info about yourself that matters to these language models, okay? All the tech companies that you interact with, smartphones, computers, they have a lot of data on you. Matter of fact, in certain ways, they know you better than you know yourself. You know, your transaction histories, your browsing histories. You couldn't name what you browsed 2 weeks ago on a Tuesday at 4 p.m., right? They know exactly. So I would encourage you to actually do a little bit of self-exploration and find out what matters about yourself So when you use this tech, you know how to communicate that, because you can only communicate stuff that you understand, right? Everybody that teaches knows this. It's really like the only way to communicate something properly is understanding it from multiple angles and communicating it concisely. So if you manage to do that, you will arrive at something like this. And I'm here to help you. I'm actually going to give you a preset and this framework that you can use, okay? I came up with this. I gave this out for free. It's on my YouTube channel. There's guides and everything. But basically, this is just a set of 12 variables: profession, role, current projects, specific interests, values and principles, and a few more. And they might seem obvious, right? But if you're like putting this together, would you consider adding your learning style, your personal background? Maybe not, but trust me, it's helpful in certain use cases, right? This is crafted to be super universal, so you can drop some of these, you can add some others. But I'm just advocating for the fact that you should have a profile like this. Because whatever you do today with Llama, GPT, Gemini, Palm, whatever you're using, whatever you're going to be doing in a year from today, this is going to help you. This is universal. So whatever chatbot you're building, whatever use case you're looking at, this stuff helps, okay? So what did we do? Well, we went ahead and we first tried to craft a system that like kind of helps you generate this for yourself. Turns out to be a little tricky, and especially for non-technical people, not that easy. If you have like some skills with writing, it becomes way easier. Actually, matter of fact, fun fact is that philosophers are really good at this. Real philosophers are excellent prompt engineers. That's kind of like one funny thing that I found. They're just like good at understanding things at like multiple levels, and that turns out to be really helpful here. But for anybody, you know, who's not a philosopher and anybody who's not a professional writer, this little framework works really well. But if you don't want to write this, then what I did, I went ahead and I created this little preset that I'm going to give you a QR codes to in a second here. So basically, you know, if you ever check out one of the over 100 YouTube videos that I have there, you're going to find that I reference this all the time because it's what I based a lot of my learning on top of. And it's just the set of custom instructions, okay? And these have been customized to these different roles, okay? So our best attempt at kind of like finding what works for you is just giving you like different ones, right? Different starting points, and then you can go ahead and mix and match these. Now, you can delete some, you can add some, but here's the one part, and this is what ChatGPT should know about you, right? It's his first field. And then there's the second part is how should it respond? This is all about the formatting of the response. So, you know, if you prefer it to answer in Spanish, then you have a point in here in the second part, which is language. So this one for the recruitment specialist is set up to be clear language is favored, use HR specific terms. There you go, that. So you could change that, right? You could just go ahead and say, always answer in Spanish. And then guess what? If you're gonna do that, I just have to watch out because otherwise everybody's gonna receive a Spanish recruitment manager if I leave it like this. So I'm gonna reset it. Okay, and if you add this in here, okay, always answer in Spanish, guess what? I'm gonna say, write me an essay about penguins. There you go, Spanish answer. So it's the little things like this, right? And you can see how a few words just change everything. So you can just go ahead and copy paste this into your notes and have it with you whenever you use a language model. You're gonna have this at your disposal. And whenever you feel like the answer is not personalized enough to you, which matter of fact, in like 80% of the use cases for most people, that's the case. You could have better answers that are hyper-personalized to you. This is what a lot of companies find, by the way, too. This is just a little bit tangential, but I do want to say that a lot of people that I talk to, a lot of entrepreneurs, the number one use case they're looking at is hyper-personalization, right? So like hyper-personalizing messaging, right? The number one scares that you see Sam Altman talking about in interviews is actually people going ahead and manipulating people for political campaigns with AI, right? Because you can have robocalls that have like analyzed your psychological profile and hyper-personalized messages that go directly to you. All of a sudden, if you're not expecting it, you can get fooled, right? Because it's somebody directly targeting your interests. Now, that's the abuse part of it, but you should be on the other side of it. You should be using this for yourself, to your advantage, right? And you can do that by customizing these little custom instructions. So we won't be going into like every single one of these, and you can actually be quite loose. You don't need advanced training to actually get this right. Just go ahead and look at that and ask yourself, hey, does this apply to me? Please cross-check any proposed strategies against best practices in talent acquisition. This one's pretty universal, right? If you work in HR, you're probably going to want this. And that's how these have been crafted. So you can go ahead and scan this little thing. You're going to have all the presets in there. Usually, like, I give this out with like my weekly newsletter for free. So, you know, if you miss it, you can always go to my AI Advantage and like get the newsletter. But basically, this Notion template, it's a website. You can also use it in Notion if you're a Notion user. Allows you to take these. I set this whole template up to actually have even more. So there's a lot here. So there's more there. I'm not going to go into all that. Some people like tell me, hey, Igor, from a marketing standpoint, it's not so smart to give the people so much. Just give them one thing. I'm like, nope, you're going to get all the assistants. For each one of these assistants, you're going to get a prompt generator. So for example, for the recruitment specialist, and this is what you can do when you have your profile, okay? For the recruitment specialist, I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to go into a new chat. And whenever you ask yourself, like, what can a recruitment specialist do with ChatGPT? What could they do, right? You could do a lot. You can start Googling, you can look on Twitter, or you just paste this prompt, run it, and it's going to give you 30 use cases that you could run today. Guess what? These are personalized on this little profile at the bottom, okay? So you have these 24 fields that we just talked about, 12 and 12. And based on this whole like prompt that I wrote, like, it's a lot. We're not going to get into it, but basically it generates prompt templates for you. So as you can see, enhance interview techniques, optimize talent sourcing, elevate employment branding, and 30 more. This works in all language models. This is a simple thing that I just gave you for free. You can go ahead and use this. All it takes is customizing this, and it's going to generate use cases for you, okay? So rather than teaching you how to prompt, I'm just telling you, like, read through this, you know, make yourself a nice tea, put your feet up and like read through this and make sure this fits your needs. And then you have the prompt generator that's going to find you all the AI use cases that you could be using today, okay? So you don't just have a personalized profile, you also have 30 use cases, and I could rerun this. It's going to give you 30 different ones. Pretty powerful stuff. And this works across everything, okay? So we talked about, you know, the history of the product. Now, where is this leading? Prompts talk results into existence, right? But the results, I mean, it's not omnipotent, right? It can't do everything. So the next evolution of this, if I said that GPTs are they're kind of a worker, an employee, then the next evolution of this is this employee getting more capable. With GPT-5, with the new Gemini model, whatever is going to come out, they're only going to become better from here on out, right? 1. 2, you're going to have multiple of them work together. You're not just going to have a web designer and a data analyst. You're also going to add a project manager and maybe 6 more team members. And the project manager is going to oversee all those. And all of a sudden, you're going to have 6 of these working together, solving a more complex task. So that's the direction this is going in. Now, how can you use that to your advantage? Well, you need to, first of all, figure out what is your task, how to describe that in words. Have a little profile like this, figure out the use cases for yourself. And then when it gets to that stage, it's going to be simple. It's like, oh, great. I always wanted to work together with a web designer, a copywriter, and a growth hacker. Nice. Let me take the presets. Let me set up free GPTs. I have mine over here, as we just talked about, because you customize it for yourself to kind of have a way of explaining what you do, what your preferences are. And then you're going to let them work together. And all of a sudden, you're going to be working with 6, 7 AI assistants and a project manager. In a version of this product that might come out this year, next year, we don't know. So that is where it's heading. I hope this was useful. I wanna end on one note, and that is, we were talking about ChatGPT here. These are pretty universal. Okay, so you can have these custom instructions, prompt factory. There's a bunch of like prompts and use cases down here that you can explore, and styles. And down here I have an organizer. There's a little video that explains it all if you want. I think it can be found here how to use. But basically, I want to leave you with this. So 2 pieces of news. I opened with this, and I'm going to close with this. So the first piece of news is that, you know, Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, has been exploring deals, first of all, in chips, you know, that ridiculous 7 trillion raise thing that has been going around, sure. But more interestingly, that they have been looking at building so-called, what people call large action models, okay? So this is all about doing things with language, taking language input, and also it has, you know, a Python sandbox, and it can certainly do calculations and stuff. But what we see with these GPTs, if you look at them and if you build one of these, which literally takes minutes if you have the Plus plan, you're going to see that one of the fields in there is actions. It's very clunky. Create new action. You need a specific OpenAI schema. They have our own GPT that does that. Then you need to host the API endpoint. It's not great. What this should be, it should be a login with Google, login with Apple thing, and like, yeah, give it access to my calendar. Yep, give it access to creating events. Give it access to my Gmail. I want this little worker to manage all my email drafts. Like, why is this not generating, I get, I don't know, 60 emails a day. Why don't I have 60 drafts sitting there every single day, right? And why is that not drafted by the combination of a customer support agent and maybe a teacher and an instructor and a salesperson, depending on what the email needs, right? Why? Because the product is not there yet, but it will be soon. And I told you how to prepare for that, okay? So this is going to evolve into, you know, in my opinion, into like drop downs, and then you're gonna have multiple workers work together. And the second piece of news that I wanted to cover, so this was the first one, like that OpenAI is rumored to build like these action models that are going to be based all around the actions, not just about the instructions. And the second piece of news is actually Gemini coming out. Now, it lacks certain features in here, but in my research of the last few days, I actually found one use case where it's better, and we just talked about this in the beginning. It's probably one of the bigger ones, okay? And I'm creating a bigger YouTube video on it and everything, but the one thing that it's really, really better at is analyzing your own style and then writing in it. That's one of the big ones, right? If you're doing emails, if you're doing anything, it's really good at kind of like looking at the emails you wrote before, extrapolating that style, and then reapplying it to new text. And it doesn't have that ChatGPT stink, as I would say. You know, there's always this way of talking, this like these a lot of adjectives, as you said. Then it also always sets up like a question and then answers it like enthusiastically. There's just these patterns that like people pick up on by now. So that's the one thing I would recommend in Gemini. And everything that I showed you with custom instructions, it's universal. If you're using Llama, if you're using Gemini, if you're using ChatGPT 3.54, it doesn't matter. You need to find a way to describe what you do to a language model. That's going to make your life easier today and in the future. That's it. Thank you.